Go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the year of the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee. Again, from yesterday, we have a temporary mic in the middle of the table. So anyone that wants to speak, including staff, if you're not at a mic, and even the council members, we need to direct our voices towards the little green circle thing in the middle of the table. But we'll have the other ones back. Anyway, on our agenda, we have 5 consent items, and we have 5 general agenda items. And we take the consent items first. And are there any consent items that you would like pulled? Councilmember Clark.
C3.
Okay. Are there any others?
I move for approval of the balance.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the consent agenda, the balance of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please press yes. All those opposed, vote no. And it passes. Will the secretary please read consent item number 3?
Item C3, Richard M. Miller, 2419 Sink Street.
If we could just get an update on
Yes.
that, Mr. Chairman.
An update, and please, like I always ask staff, state your name and your title so people listening will know who you are.
Okay. My name is Tiffany Harris. I'm with the Community Development Department. I'm speaking on C3 2419 Sink Street. Richard Miller is the owner. The property was initially heard at the December 10th, 2019 committee meeting. Committee voted to have the owner make repairs and requested that repairs be in compliance by today's meeting. As of January 13, 2020, 7 violations have been complied, 5 are remaining. The pictures before you are from December 24th, 2019. And the pictures now are from January 13, 2020.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I was saying, in light of the fact he's done 7 of the 12, I'd like to continue this for 1 more month, give him another month to do the last 5. That's it.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
Then I have a second.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and properly seconded that item C3 be given an additional 30 days, being that they've already completed 7 of the 12 violations. All those in favor, please vote by saying yes. All those opposed, likewise. Thank you, and the motion passes. And then now, Madam Secretary, if we move on to the general agenda, please.
Item G1, ordinance revising Chapter B of Unified Development Ordinances to regulate residential business and walls and front yards on property with a residential building that is single-family duplex, twin home, triplex, quadruplex, or townhouse use. UDO 290.
Thank you. Excuse me, Councilmember Clark.
Mr. Miller, we continued yours for 30 days. We continued yours for 30 days since you've done 7 of the 12. We've already done it.
It's Christmas. It's Christmas and New Year's, Mr. Miller. It's Christmas and New Year's.
You can still stay for the rest of the meeting.
If you
like.
feel so
Okay.
inclined.
I gotta go back to work.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, Brandon, but
I know.
let him know what's going on.
I know.
Chris Murphy, Deputy Director of Planning and Development Services. It's been a while since we've been here on this item. This is kind of an update and kind of get some direction from the committee. Following much discussion on this item in committee, about a year's worth, the item moved forward as UDO 290 to the Planning Board in April of 2019. There were 3 speakers in opposition, as well as written opposition from the Neighborhood Alliance. The Planning Board unanimously voted to recommend denial of the text amendment dealing with fences. The concerns cited by the Planning Board and those in opposition included an unclear need for the amendment, too restrictive regulations, treating different fences and walls, wall types differently, and the unintended consequences of adopting the ordinance since there was no existing inventory of fences. Between the denial and now, staff has tweaked the ordinance. The new version only deals with the front fence, and that is the fence that would be parallel or approximately parallel with the front of the structure, but does not include the side fences in front of the structure. With that, a lot of the same concerns that were cited by the opposition still remain. I believe you received a letter yesterday from the Neighborhood Alliance citing that they still oppose the ordinance. With that, we're looking for direction from the committee as far as where we go. Again, you have the version that came out of committee that went to the planning board that was unanimously recommended for denial, and you have a substitute version that staff worked on based on, I believe, some of those concerns. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions or any further discussion.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the committee? Councilmember Clark.
As far as my direction, I would never support something that got voted down 7-0 from the planning board. Now, if the staff wants to take it back to the planning board, I do value the planning board's opinion. Don't always agree with it, but I do value it. And I think when it's that unanimous, that should be cause to pause and think about it. But I think either we drop it or we send it back to the planning board for another vote.
And just a little bit of on that, whenever it went to the, we always take things, obviously it comes out of this committee, we take it to work session at the planning board, and there was some discussion about whether or not they wanted to tackle their own version. Mm-hmm. And the feeling was, let's vote this version up or down, we're not interested, or we don't think there is reason to do this. So they voted to just take action on that item as opposed to trying to craft their own version.
But they didn't vote on the revised.
Correct.
That's what I was referring to. Anyway.
Councilman Best.
I appreciate staff's effort in responding to wherever the concern came from. I haven't been hearing it. I am not persuaded that it's worth staff's time to continue to work on this at this time. If there is a substantial amount of interest at some later point in fixing specifically identified problems, we can take it up again. But at this point, I would recommend that we drop it in whatever form is technically correct, Madam Attorney. Whether the council has to formally act on denial, or whether we can just recommend that we not move forward.
I think you probably need to send it forward and let council just take an action on it.
All right, I would move that the committee recommend denial.
Councilmember Scipio.
Quick question on this. Is it still, any materials in the fencing other than those of brick are going to be prohibited? Is that still the essence of this particular ordinance?
Brick is exempted from the regulations, period. If you are doing wooden construction, those kind of things, that you can't build a fence out of trash, you can't build a fence out of debris, you can't build a fence out of some types of materials, but this primarily deals with wooden fences, vinyl fences, those kind of things. So that's what the regulations apply to. Masonry and brick walls are totally exempt from these regulations, period.
So that is economic discrimination built into that ordinance. So I wouldn't be in favor of that. Do we need a motion to move it?
I'll move recommendation.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, just tell me what the motion is. We'll vote on. So the
Do you have a
motion.
comment? Councilmember Lawson.
I do. If this goes forward, I have grave concerns about enforceability of this regulation and how we would do it, particularly in view of all the fences that are already in place and the requirement that they become non-compliant and subject, I assume, to fines or whatever after 6 months. Is that what we've got?
Currently under both versions of the ordinance, there's a 6-month amortization period.
It's not an acceptable number for me to try to deal with this, and I'm concerned about fences that are already in place and how long the life expectancy of some of those are, and then the ability to regulate in the future licensed or legal fences. And I haven't heard anything from inspections or anybody about licensing or certifying or in the codes that we, inspections, that we put a little like on HVAC, we put a little sticker on the HVAC unit saying that it's approved, it's an approved fence. So if we have even if we have a mixed and matched period of time where we have some fences that are legal and some not, I just see a lot of problems with this. And I haven't heard the implementation aspect of it that makes me comfortable at this point in going ahead with it. I mean, I see some value in it, but it's too encumbered right now for me to feel comfortable moving forward.
Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded that the ordinance moves forward, or
Moves
that it
forward to
moves?
denial, and I can
that it
get
move-
with the council member as well who requested it and see.
Okay. But we can vote it down right now.
You can make a recommendation.
We can make a,
Yeah.
okay. All those in favor of moving, of voting, of denying this resolution, this ordinance, vote no?
Yes.
Vote yes?
Yes, on the
Vote
motion to
yes?
deny.
We always get caught up in that when we're reversing the positive. Vote yes, and all those opposed vote no.
I hope we did that.
Can I ask one question?
The vote passes with all yeses.
Point
Yes,
of order, is this
Councilman
going to
Clark.
require public hearing at this point?
That's the attorney behind it.
At this point, would it be a notice of public hearing on this particular item?
It hasn't been published yet for public hearing, so that would be the next thing.
That would be the next step, so
Right.
it could be 2 weeks out before we vote on
It-
it. 2 weeks out.
It could be, but I'd like to also talk to the council member in terms of whether or not moving forward.
But there will be a public hearing.
If we move forward,
If we
yes.
move forward.
Unless it just
Dies,
Dies.
dies of natural death.
Right.
Yeah.
And remember, Councilmember Larson, we won't
I'm
catch
sorry.
you. Yeah, you like
We got a
that.
little donut in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next item, please.
Item G2, resolution authorizing the allocation of revitalizing urban commercial areas and commercial revitalization of blighted areas funds for a project in the 14th Street, New Walkertown Road area located in the East Ward.
And we will, Mr. Raleigh, we'll go through this one, but everybody was here yesterday. But go ahead and give us a short report of what this is about, the people that are listening.
Certainly, Chairman Adams, members of the committee, good afternoon. Evan Raleigh, Assistant City Manager. As the chairman indicated, this item was discussed at length at yesterday's Finance Committee. This is a request for RUCA funding in the amount of just north of $800,000 to support the construction of a new facility in the 14th Street, New Walkertown area. The requester is Mr. Rajesh Shaw, who currently owns the gas station that's located there at the corner. He's looking to create a new facility that would adjoin the gas station that would be a multi-tenant space. The structure of this particular loan would be half low interest and half matching, meaning that of the total funds that would be put into this project, the city would be recouping or expecting to recoup half of that amount. And again, I think as I've mentioned before, this particular project is unique in that it is a new construction. Most of the RUCA projects, or all of the RUCA projects to date, have been rehabilitation of existing buildings. So in terms of the nature of this particular project, that's something unique about it. The Finance Committee did, I believe, elect to move this item forward without a recommendation. And there were several pieces of information that requested that we are putting together in preparation for next Tuesday's council meeting.
Mr. Raleigh and then Councilmember Scipio, could you just give the definition of what RUCA is and what when it was initiated and what was the intent?
Certainly. Chairwoman Adams, the RUCA program stands for, it's RUCA, it stands for Revitalizing Urban Commercial Areas, and this is a program that has been in place for approximately 15 years now. It's been funded various ways. I think we've had 3 or 4 infusions of funding across several phases. There are approximately 3 dozen or so commercial areas all across the city. I think every ward, I believe, is represented on that list of eligible RUCA areas. But the intent of the program is to revitalize blighted commercial areas, and blighted as defined by vacancy, the physical condition of these properties. It's a property improvement program targeted specifically to commercial corridors in our city that have fallen into a state of disrepair or been disinvested in over time.
Councilmember Scipio, and then Mr. Raleigh, when we finish this or close to the end, could you put the pictures up of some of the places and wards where we've done these projects so people can see? Councilmember Scipio.
Mr. Raleigh, this is a program that, as you said, that's been in existence for many years. Have the criteria changed over the years? Specifically, I was told that early on, in the early phases of this, recipients had to have some type of private financing as part of this, and now that is not essential to this program. As I understand it, the program provides half of the cost as a grant and the other half of the cost as a deferred loan, that the applicant does not have to have any additional financing for this. And that may be a departure from what it used to be. Is that correct or not?
Councilmember Scipio, the financial structure has always been as it currently is. There have been some other changes to the program over time, largely related to the administration of the program. The city basically acted as a bank originally, but as we got into projects and recognized the need for additional oversight from the city, we added that in as a component in terms of how the projects were actually awarded early on. You couldn't, if you were just an individual property owner within one of these RUCA areas, you could not yourself submit an application for consideration. You had to have at least 2 other property owners, so a total of 3 in any particular area that would have to come forward and express interest in doing a project before council could consider awarding funds to a particular area. So those are some of the modifications that have been made, but the financing structure, to my knowledge, has been the same. So we've always offered applicants the ability to take advantage of a matching grant from the city. Well, I should say deferred forgivable loan, which eventually could become a grant if certain terms are met. And then the other half, if they don't have any private money to bring to the deal, that we would extend the applicant a low-interest loan.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councilwoman
Just
Clark,
briefly,
Councilwoman Besson.
the point of using private financing, it allows us to do more projects. For example, it's an $800,000 project, we're putting $800,000 in. If they could get a $100,000 bank loan, we'd only have to put in 7. So to me, it's a question, and I supported it at finance yesterday. But the more we can leverage our money, the more projects we can do. Because at the end of the day, when we run out of money, we run out of money. And I believe we learned yesterday this will use up RUCAs 2 and 3.
I believe I'd have to check to see how much is remaining, but it would certainly use a significant chunk. Yes, it'd be a significant amount.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Besson, then Councilwoman Scipio.
Yeah, just a general observation. The RUCA program was always intended to serve as a jumpstart for revitalizing areas that serve neighborhoods that were underserved or disadvantaged. And like all programs of this nature, there are some that work well and some that don't pan out. As long as you're responsible about where the degree of risk you take on, it's the kind of program that is intended to target situations where it's tougher to get private investment. Now, when you can leverage private investment, it's a good idea to do so. I wouldn't categorically decline support projects that did not leverage a financial institution's loan. The thing that was the biggest change from the initial program to what we have today is in the supervision and oversight. I mean, that was where we saw a couple of serious problems take place, and we had to correct for that, to keep that kind of problem from recurring. But that's just, for a long-term perspective, that's fine on the program.
Councilmember Sidney.
I have a couple of more questions. The payback, when people make those loan payments, they go back into the RUCA fund? Or do they go somewhere else in the budget?
Councilmember Sibley, I'd have to check to see specifically where the loan proceeds or how we account for them. I'm not exactly sure where they.
Yeah, let's see if they go back into the program.
Yeah,
So
they go certainly to one of
They
our
go somewhere.
economic development accounts. I just don't know exactly where.
And
we account
I
for
know
them.
we're going to get an updated summary of it, and I hope it includes the number of successes, meaning how many loans were supported and how many have been paid back, how many did not complete it. And so I would like to see that too.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Can
Councilmember.
I be clear about something? This is basically $800,000 that the city is putting into one project. 400 of that is basically a loan-free grant. Just, we're not going to see that come back again. That's just encouragement to make a business happen in a location. The other 400, whatever, is in the form of a loan. The interest rate is
I believe it's 3%.
3% paid out over a period of
10 years typically.
10 years. That will be recovered. That's not forgivable.
Correct.
That's not forgivable loan. Both of those, in other words, the city is totally financing this enterprise on a vacant piece of land that is currently being occupied by another business. The gas station is operational as a business.
So the gas station is operational. The actual footprint that this new proposed structure will go on is currently vacant. It's a large parcel that it's owned by the same property owner, but
So our lien,
it's a separate.
our
Yeah.
lien on the property will be on that vacant piece of land, not on the gas station.
It's all within
Yeah.
the same
It's the
footprint.
same.
It just has several buildings within that footprint.
So if they
Yes, Councilmember Larson. Yeah.
I'm sorry, if if they do not fulfill the obligation of the loan, what do we gain? What do we acquire?
The gas.
The building?
It's-
The entire
building,
parcel.
and the land.
It's gonna be a lien on the building plus the land.
Plus the land?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
Now, unless he finds a way to somehow separate that specific parcel that has the building on, or has the potential building on that we're financing.
To the best of our knowledge, that land is free and clear now and does not have a mortgage on it or any liens on it.
We're still verifying that.
Verify that. Could we definitely do that?
Oh, we will.
They'll have it.
We will. I've had a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just,
Any other questions or comments? May I have a motion?
I move that we proceed with this resolution.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded on the resolution. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Motion passes. Next agenda item, please.
Item G3, information on the City of Winston-Salem's disparity study.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Adams and member of the committee. I am Taisha Hinton, the Assistant Director with the Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. And back in March of last year, it seems like so much longer, we entered into a contract with MGT Consulting to review a 5-year period of our procurement opportunities in 5 different categories: construction, professional services, other services, goods and supplies. MGT was also charged with analyzing if a disparity existed between our utilization and our availability of MWBE firms. Today, MGT is here to present to you their findings and their recommendations. We have Renetta Mitchell, the project manager, and Reggie Smith, the project director, who will be giving you this presentation. And before they begin, I just want to acknowledge our MWB Advisory Committee. Almost your entire back row is involved of citizens who have been strongly committed to this cause. They were involved in the solicitation of the RFP. They've received monthly updates. They attended our public engagement sessions. They also had a report from MGT, and they consistently encourage and challenge staff, and I just want to publicly thank them for that. They're led by Mr. Kelly Ayers, the chairperson, and Kelly Easton, the vice chair.
Thank you all so much. We're going to give you a chance to introduce yourselves if you stick around after we do the presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Reggie Smith, and I am the Vice President for MGT Consulting, and we were retained to do this disparity study for the city, and we're extremely pleased to be able to come here today and to share our findings and recommendations with you and our conclusions from the study. And certainly want to give our appreciation to Taisha and the rest of the city who have cooperated with us and helped us along the way in coming up with the results and the conclusions. I know that this has been quite a journey, and we're pleased to be here today to share those findings with you. Vanetta Mitchell was the project director, and she's going to do the heavy lifting for us today. She's been in contact. She was the day-to-day person that was responsible for giving out assignments to the team, responsible for coordinating schedules and making sure things got done. So I'm going to let her take us through the presentation, and then we will answer any questions that you may have related to the study and our presentation.
Thank you.
Vanetta?
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Adams and members of the committee. It's great to be here and great to see everyone together. And good to see the advisory committee who really raked us over the coals saying, do this, do this, do this. But yeah, that's right. We appreciate that though. The community really makes the study strong. It really commits to, shows the commitment to participation. So without further ado, let's kind of go through the slides that we have prepared for you today. The objective of the study, as Taisha mentioned, is to determine if the significantly statistical disparity exists between the availability of minority women-owned firms and the utilization of those firms in a particular marketplace exists. So was our charge to determine if that occurred. The framework of the study, we looked at the city's expenditures between July 1 of 2013 through June 30th of 2018. That's our snapshot in time in which we were looking to see if disparity existed for the city. The business ownership classifications that we identified for this analysis is African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, Native American, non-minority women, and non-MWBE firms. And again, the industries that we analyzed were construction, goods and services or goods and supplies, other services, and professional services. A&E is included in the professional services bucket. Oops, this is not working. Okay, there we go. Our methodology for the study first was to look at the legal framework of the disparity study. There has the landmark case of Croson and other relevant court cases over the years kind of laid the foundation of how and what activities should occur to find a statistically valid disparity study or to conduct that study. So we first started with identifying that legal framework on what our methodology should be moving forward. We also included the task of this study of utilization, availability, disparity, And that will be some of the findings that we will present to you today. We utilize payment data versus awards data. So it's two different things. Payment is what people actually receive, what they get to go pay their bills with, buy groceries with, etc. Versus awards is where I'm going to promise I'll pay you $100, but I only give you 90. So the custom census approach is an industry-accepted approach to determining availability. Who is available in your specific market area that is interested and willing to do business with the city of Winston-Salem. And that's one of the key factors in determining whether or not there is disparity as well. So we conducted a custom census approach by conducting a survey of firms registered with Dun & Bradstreet. Those firms, the criteria for that, those firms had to be located in the relevant market area, which we'll talk about on the next slide. They also had to provide the types of goods and services that the city procures. Okay, that's really, really important. They had to also confirm that they are interested in, willing, or have done business with the city. And then we also collect their race, ethnicity, and gender so that we can categorize those in those business ownership classifications that we talked about earlier. When we're talking with, so the study has two components, the qualitative and the quantitative aspect of it. For the qualitative aspect of it, we use several approaches and several methods to collect data from the public. Businesses who have done business, interested in doing business, not only with the city directly, but also with prime contractors or prime vendors that have contracts with the city where they're interested in working as a subcontractor, subconsultant, or supplier. So we have conducted in-depth interviews with business owners. We've conducted in-depth interviews with stakeholders, and these are trade association, business organizations within the area that provide that type of professional and technical assistance to firms, and also advocate for firms in the market. We conducted 3 public meetings, and then we also conducted surveys. And to reach out to the community, we use email blasts, press releases. Taisha and I were co-hosts on TV 13, which was really fun, and direct calls. We also sought the assistance of trade associations and business organizations to also distribute that information to their members as well as printed and digital ads. So let's get into some of our findings. The relevant market area that we determined for the city of Winston-Salem is the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point combined statistical area. And that encompasses the counties of Alamance, Davidson, Davie, Forsyth, Guilford, Randolph, Rockingham, Stokes, Surrey, and Yadkin counties. So when the city is looking to revise their program, conduct their outreach, and count firms, MWBE firms that have been utilized, they're going to be looking for firms that are located in these counties. So that is your relevant market area for the study. The market area has to be established first before we can conduct the utilization, availability, and disparity analysis, anecdotal as well as private sector. So a lot of the analyses following the market area was conducted based on this market area. So some of our key findings, we looked at prime utilization, and we defined prime in this study as a firm that has a direct contract with the city, not just construction. So MGT is a prime. The utilization of firms, the dark blue is the percentage of utilization of firms that are MWBE, and the lighter blue a percentage of utilization by non-MWBE firms. The total spend in the relevant market area in all business categories was a little bit over $423 million for the 5-year study period. So these are the percentage of utilization of those firms in that time period. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Tell the audience and the council what the other services mean, since that seems to be our major area.
Where you have most participation. Great question. So other services includes security, janitorial, auto repair, those types of services. Your professional services would be your consultants, architectural and engineering, environmental studies, economic development studies, those types of things. This graph gives you a representation, or a pie chart gives you a representation of the dollars of MWBEs only in the various categories. So professional services, there was a little bit over $1 million that was utilized by MWBE firms, $21 million for construction firms, and this is at the prime level. Goods and supplies was $4.2 million, and other services was almost $22 million spent with MWBE firms during the 5-year period.
Yes, Councilwoman Stuckey.
Is there a way to say how many firms were in each of those categories?
Yes,
For the
ma'am.
number, is that somewhere in your study?
It is not in the report, but we've given all of the data that supports all of these findings to Taisha, Ms. Hinton, so she will be able to pull that up. I don't have it right here, but we can get that to you.
I'm just wondering if we had sort of 3 in professional services and we had 50 in construction, that kind of,
Good breakdown.
that kind of.
Yeah, good breakdown.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the other things that we see quite frequently across the country is that some of your utilization, where you know, $21 million, is that 50 firms, like you're saying, or is that 2 firms?
Yeah.
And you can tell that in the data, absolutely. We also looked at construction subcontracting. Was it January of 2018? The city started implementing goals for professional services and other services. So there wasn't enough data for us to collect to analyze those 2 categories. Construction data is generally, if you have any subcontracting or MWBE data, that's generally where you'll have the most robust amount of data. So we were able to conduct a construction-only MWBE subcontracting analysis. And in Chapter 4 of the report, it gives you more information on that. For MWBE subcontracting, there was a total of estimated to be $87.7 million, of which that 24% of MWBEs was $20 million, almost $21 million of utilization with MWBEs, subcontracting.
I'm sorry, what period is this?
This is the same study period,
What?
July 1, 2013 to June 30th, 2018.
5 years.
5 years.
That conforms to what we saw earlier?
I'm sorry?
The percentage earlier for construction looked like less.
That was primes, this is subcontractors.
Ah, okay.
Yes, sir.
But wouldn't there be some overlap there? Because when you hire a prime to build your building and he hires 10 subs underneath it, so I pay him $100, but he pays his subs most of that.
It's already when we calculate that, it's calculated in there.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
By the way, Ms. Adams had an important call she needed to take, so please continue.
Okay, thank you. The next finding that I'd like to share with you is the MWBE availability. Again, talking about availability, and our approach was to utilize a custom census approach. So in professional services, the darker blue is MWBE availability. There is 23%, and this encompasses all 4 of the categories that we talked about. So 23% availability for MWBEs in professional services, 43.5% in other services, 27% for goods and supplies, and 38% for construction.
I have a question. Is that saying that in our geographical area, this is the percent of businesses that are available? Okay. And then it goes back to how much we're getting is out of that. So that 1.9% of professional services is out of 23% that's available.
No, ma'am.
No.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So it was 1.9% utilization. So those are how many dollars that you actually spent with MWBE firms during that 5-year period. Okay, so this availability tells you who is in the marketplace. So it not only includes those firms that you contracted with, but it also includes other firms that are willing and able to do business with the city.
How big the market is.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember,
Gotcha.
that's it.
The availability does not take into account who participates in the bidding, or does it?
It takes into account those who have been awarded contracts. The bid data was not available for us to look at.
Availability.
Available to do business with the city.
Right, so you only count as available if you have done some business?
Or if you are willing to do, and you sell the types of services that the city procures.
But my question specifically is, does this categorize those that have bid on projects, or is this the larger universe of people who are available but who may not have chosen to make bids?
It will encompass both, but I cannot tell you which. Yes. And I say that because there's one recommendation that we have in here to capture just that bid data, who's actually submitting quotes even though they're not winning.
Right.
Yes.
And just so you all know again, this is kind of the background for some of the other findings that you're going to see. And she's setting it up so you'll see. This group right here is all the people that are available to do business, whether they bid it in the past, whether they got a contract, or whether they didn't, but they're there and we never got with them and they didn't get with us. Okay?
That's right. Hey, you come up here, Joe.
I know. You all have taught me very well over the past year and a half.
So here's what everyone wants to know. Was there disparity? And there was disparity in many categories, but not all. So for construction, across all of the business ownership classifications, there was disparity across the board. Professional services, there was disparity across the board. In other services, there was disparity except for non-minority women. That means overutilization in that category. For goods and supplies, there was disparity except it was insignificant for Native Americans because there wasn't enough availability and no utilization, if that makes sense. So it's a formula that we use so that we couldn't determine disparity. And for construction subcontracting, there was disparity across the board except for Asian American-owned firms, subcontracting firms, and we could not calculate disparity for Native American firms. Okay, so key findings. We had 3 public meetings in July of 2018, and we had 38 participants, and 22 of those individuals that came to one of those 3 meetings gave their comments, their testimonies about their experiences doing business or attempting to do business with the city. Pardon me. We conducted 40 interviews with business owners. We completed 146 surveys. Even though we made an attempt to contact those several firms about 33,000 times, we were able to at least get 146 surveys, and we developed and launched a disparity study specific website for the city where they could also go to that website and provide their comments. And we had one firm that provided an online comment. Some of the suggested remedies, and these are from your business community, that they wanted to see is establish goals based on the size of the project, target smaller projects for MWBE firms, focus on discretionary spending in all departments, and advertise upcoming or future procurements. Okay. As a part of the study, we also calculated, based on the utilization and availability of firms in the marketplace, we calculated aspirational MWBE goals. These are goals that the city as a whole, for all procurement that they do, all spending that they do, try to achieve in these categories and these percentages. So construction, 11.44%, construction subcontracting, 25.74%, professional services, 4.04%, other services, 36.78%, and goods and supplies, 9.60%. These are not goals that just get applied blanketly to all contracts. These are just internal aspirational goals that every time you spend, swipe that P card or whatever you do, they all accumulate, and you're trying to achieve these goals citywide. Okay. Some of the commendations and recommendations that we made as part of the study. We do want to commend the city and the MWBE office on a lot of program improvements over the last couple of years that were made. There's a whole list that we commend the city on in the report, but it is great to see that there's support for the program, and there's always something that was being done to improve the process, to improve the reporting. So we do want to commend the city on their support and work within the MWBE program. We also recommend that you narrowly tailor the program. Whatever you implement, any modifications that you make to the program as a result of this study, that those modifications are narrowly tailored to where the disparities were identified that we showed in the previous slide. Subcontract project goals. We make a recommendation here to make sure that the project goals are not blanket goals, that you specifically look at the scope of work, the availability of firms in the marketplace, and calculate a goal that is based on that particular solicitation. So right now, I think there's a 10% goal on professional services and other services. You want to look at each of those contracts specifically and see if there is a different goal. It could be 8, it could be 20, just based on the scope of work, based on the availability of firms in the marketplace. And of course, any participation of MWBE firms from those independent solicitations get all rolled up into your citywide aspirational goals.
Aren't we doing that now? By
For
project?
construction?
For construction, yeah.
Yes, we're doing.
Because you use the word continue up there, because I thought that was something we are doing.
Correct. We do project-specific goals for construction at the present time.
Okay, construction,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Expand data collection and management, and we talked a few minutes ago about the collecting of bid data, who's actually bidding on projects. That is one of the recommendations that we make. And also to find a system in which you can manage the actual collection of data. Subcontract data is important. Construction subcontract data was the only data that we could collect, particularly for MWBEs. There was a lot of that information. But in order to get an actual and accurate account for participation, you'll need to collect all subcontracting data for both MWBE and non-MWBE firms, as well as suppliers across all your procurement categories. So that was a recommendation there as well.
And what this will tell us is, again, instead of us, everybody, staff, people, they do a good job, great job, but it keeps us aware when we ask for the reporting, when Taisha and the coming report and the board, the committee, we'll know exactly how many non-minorities, how many African Americans, how many whatevers that we did business with, how many bidded, how many didn't bid. Right now, we, like she said, they can only tell us this much information. When it's this much information that's out there that helps us to be better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another commendation and recommendation is the outreach for informal purchases. So a commendation for the city that we noted was the upcoming purchase opportunity form that departments fill out if they're purchasing anything between $1,000 using their P card to almost just a penny under $20,000 of that discretionary spend. Our recommendation is to have the departments to also document who they've outreached to, who submitted those bids, et cetera, so that the MWBE office can help the departments identify other opportunities for MWBEs to bid or submit quotes. Right to audit language in contracts. As part of the data collection for subcontractors, I mentioned earlier that MWBE subcontractor data was pretty easy to get hold of. The non-MWBE data was kind of sketchy, so we put in place a process in which we go out to the primes who have received contracts and ask them to submit to us all of their non-MWBE subcontract data, how much they paid, who the firms were, et cetera. That did not go over very well. And one of the main barriers to that is that the firm said there's nothing in their contract that says they have to share that information. So we are recommending that some sort of language in your contracts that say, firms must maintain documentation of their subcontractors or whatever it is that you find appropriate for a period of time, so that if any time you need to go back and request that data from a vendor that's doing business with you, that language is in your contract.
Will you be able to give us examples of other cities, if there are, that currently are using that? Therefore, our city attorney can figure that out.
We do have some samples of that.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. There gonna be some mad people with y'all. Go ahead.
On-call services, consider rotating, utilizing a vendor rotation system for your on-call contracts, making sure that there's a significant outreach to MWBE firms who can qualify for those contracts, and then rotate those on-call contracts for utilization. Historically underutilized business. The city should define MWBE firms as those that are certified with the state of North Carolina under the statewide uniform certification. Okay. And then this is a lot of work. So there is a recommendation in here to consider adding staff and departmental liaisons. If someone in the department is responsible for procurement of your discretionary items, that they act as a liaison to the MWBE office to help send that information of who they outreach to, who submitted a quote, et cetera, et cetera. And then also there's a recommendation in here before just adding staff to actually do a desk audit to see what the specific task and responsibilities need to be of any additional staff that the city may deem appropriate.
And you'll be able to provide us benchmarks of other cities comparable to our size, maybe, whether here in North Carolina, that have maybe added staff or have more staff than we do in their MWBE program, so we can kind of get an idea. I mean, if it works, because if Greensboro, if they've got 5, and Durham's got 2, and Charlotte's got 8, and we just need to see where we are, because right now we have what?
3 full-time staff.
3 full-time staff. And like you said, we just need to get a picture lead of what our staff does and kind of an organizational chart breakdown of what they're responsible for.
We can talk about that. Okay. And that is our presentation for today. I'll be happy to take additional questions.
Yep.
Councilmember Clark.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be quick. I'm gonna jump around a little bit. On page 8,
Okay.
and this is the executive summary you sent us, it lists by inside of Winston, outside of Winston, a total of $666 million.
Yes,
Okay.
that's your total spend for the 5 years.
Yeah, for the category, the geographical area you drew.
No, the 666 is for your total spend regardless of where the firm is located, and inside of your market area is the 400.
Okay, because that was my question, why that differed than the, but, so this outside Winston-Salem is outside that whole area?
That's correct.
Okay, so a third of our purchasing is outside there, which doesn't surprise me. Next question, you listed the categories, male, female, Hispanic, et cetera, et cetera. What do you do when we purchase something from a public company?
They are counted as a non-MWBE firm
Why?
because there is no specific ownership of the company, and most times when we ask for the ethnicity of the owner, because they state.
No, these are public companies,
Yeah,
stock traded.
yeah, exactly. So when you ask for the ethnicity of the owner, who has to own at least 51% of the company, they don't have it.
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay,
And we just bought a couple $100,000 worth of software from Microsoft. I think they were the only bidder. Everyone who works for the city of Winston-Salem, excluding the police, because they all want to, are partial owners of Microsoft. because that stock is owned by the North Carolina Retirement Fund and their $100 billion. My concern with including public companies is they are a little bit of everything. They are not white-owned, they're not black-owned, et cetera, When an employee takes his P card and goes to Lowe's Hardware, he is buying something from a black-managed company because the president of Lowe's is a black male. And who owns it, who knows? There's probably millions of owners. I just think that needs to be another category because it's a non-applicable category because they do have minority owners, they have foreign owners, they got everything. And in the example of the Microsoft, they're the only ones there. So I think it greatly distorts the data when you include public companies because they do have elements of female management, black management, white, et cetera. We buy our electricity from a company that's run by a female. We have Chevy Impala police cars that is from a company, the president is a female. So I mean, it's just, I just think it makes for a strange apples and oranges. But anyway.
We understand, and this is not just a situation here in Winston-Salem, but throughout the country. But again, it is very difficult to determine ethnicity of these public companies when they're, the ownership is all over the place. And also, like Nada said, who's president is not necessarily who owns.
I'm suggesting you don't include the data.
Right.
Is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Because it is it's an apples and oranges. Because we have some huge contracts that we buy from public companies. That is another.
Small ones that you buy from public companies.
What's that?
I said there's some small ones also. That
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And a lot of smaller companies are going to employee-owned type of companies, and they would.
But it's very easy to know if a company is public.
That's true.
And I just think those numbers ought to be set aside. That's just a personal preference. Because I think it greatly distorts the data. But anyway, let me finish. I got the floor. I got a few more. Let me keep going. Page 13.
Of which document?
I'm looking at their 16 page.
Okay, executive summary.
Executive summary. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. In here, and it was good you got feedback from folks in the business, and it says most of the comments, recommendations, no, excuse me, finding H. Among the MBEs who responded, most of them said the biggest concern for both prime and subprime contractors was identifying the opportunities with the city. And below that, you've got some things we have done. My question is, are there other ways we can notify people? Because that always seems to come up, and we always try to, but the comment under finding H.
Anecdotal.
You said that the biggest concern you heard was they don't know what's available. And I'm saying, well, there's no specific recommendation in here on how now we've listed 16 items we've done. But I keep hearing this and I get frustrated that, well, we don't know what's to be bid. And what else can we do is what I'm asking to work finding H. And you can deal with that later if you want to, but,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Finding that recommendation.
I did like your idea of on-call service rotation. I don't know how prevalent it is. I appreciate some comments from the staff. The only thing I know about is record service, which I know they do specifically rotate. But again, these are questions we can get at a later date. Last question, and I'll do the others with staff later. Anything over, I think it's 300,000, we do mandatory bidding. And the lowest responsible bidder gets it, with some exceptions. If it's a service, sometimes we do requests for proposals, et cetera. My question is, we can do everything right. You can send out registered notices to everybody, you can hold classes, you can do this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, the lowest responsible bidder gets the bid. per the law. Okay, so anyway, so what I'm getting at, you can do everything you're supposed to be doing, but you still may not get the diversity you're looking for because of the system.
The programs are opportunities to compete.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, okay. And the last one, and I will compliment you on this, I find, and I tried to do this and I finally gave up, it was so darn complicated, is when we go out for a bid, I've seen countless times where we sent a bid out to 20 minority firms and no one sent something in. And that may be a case of the round hole not matching the square peg or whatever. Because just because someone's in the construction business, for example, doesn't mean they build playground equipment, things of that sort. So I think it's important to capture, when we go out for something, who was sent a bid and who we got it back from and who it was awarded to. Another example I would give, we had a yard cutting, grass cutting, landscaping. We had 10 minority bids. Only one's going to get it. In that case, 90% of the minority bidders did not get the job. And by the way, whoever's in charge of training, we got enough minority landscaping companies, which was overflowing with them. And to me, that would give a false signal. If you say, wait a minute, 90% of the people didn't get the bid. Yeah, but minority firms got 100% of the project. So, and what I see that frustrates me is a clustering of minority businesses in certain areas, and you pointed out it's in that other services, where we have more than enough bidders, but not enough in other areas. And I could not, in dissecting the data, it was too complicated to try to come up with that. And unless you capture it as we do it.
And that's what the data is.
And that's what, because my anecdotal evidence that I have tried to accumulate over the years is we do not have enough minority bidders. So many dollars we do, there is no minority bid. And a lot of it is public companies, because public companies make things differently than private companies. We cannot buy an $800,000 fire truck from a minority company. And we can't buy it from a private company. There's only 3 companies that make them, and I think GM owns one of them. I think they own Freightliner. And so I appreciate the study, but I still have these frustrations of, and the last comment I wrote on here, are there any specific areas in goods or services where there are ample vendors that have significant underrepresentation? And I don't need a category like other goods and services. I need a category like crushed stone or whatever, asphalt or whatever. By the way, there's only 2 companies that do crushed stone. They're both public, but anyway.
And one of the things, as they pointed out, is we've enlarged our circle, our business footprint, because as you, well, I don't know, remember I told you, we tried to do this or suggested maybe to the city manager that we needed to do that minorities don't all that do business on another of a business that we need outside of goods and services and construction. They may not be in Forsyth County. They may be up in Stokes County, and maybe their family been doing this forever, and they working in Charlotte and everywhere else. So I think, council members, the fact that we're expanding the footprint will help us to feel like, as an African American and a minority, my thing is making sure that minorities have an opportunity, whether they're from Winston, Greensboro, Alabama, I don't care. But the point is the tax dollars eventually end up at the state that we all pay, but I still feel like that pot, however, which way it's shaped or how deep it is, African Americans and minorities and women should have an opportunity to participate at the same level. Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you. I was trying to get a short idea of what this study says, and I want you to correct me if I'm in error.
Okay.
And this is coming from the presentation that was done where it talked about availability. If I look at that, is that saying to me, there are firms across all the major categories that are MWBE? So if we are seeking them, there are quite a few there to be sought. However, we are not getting them to bid. So did you discover whether we were adequately seeking them or not?
So the availability analysis will not tell you if they're not bidding with you. Because we've done that research as part of the study to tell you who's out there.
Yeah.
So moving forward, what Taisha and her team may think about doing is making sure that all the firms that we've identified in the database that all this data belongs to you, so we're giving that database back, is to go through and identify those firms, we updated NAICS codes, which give you a specific, like crushed stone that you talked about, it give you a specific type of work. You can go in and look to see, okay, we have all of these firms in our marketplace in our availability pool now. So let's start reaching out to them and invite them to bid on the contract. So it's not telling you, does not tell you that 23% of your professional service firms have bid on your projects.
No.
This is just telling you that 23% professional firms are available in your marketplace as the time this is being presented to you.
And that's what I wanted to make sure, because I had been on the assumption on many of our contracts is that there are no minorities in the business. But now we're seeing that across those broad categories, they are there. So we have to go in and find them and create relationships, do workshops, and recruit them to come in and bid. So that's great to know, but we aren't doing our part in getting them here. But they do exist.
Yeah,
That's
they exist,
important.
Councilmember Scipio, but they exist in this new footprint. In the footprint that we've been previously operating
been very
in,
narrow.
it has been very narrow. Councilmember
Okay.
Dexter.
Yeah,
that's
just
good.
a couple of follow-ups to a couple of questions that colleagues have answered. I mean, what Councilmember Scipio was just talking about was why I asked specifically regarding availability, whether that took into account who was bidding right. It doesn't. So clearly two of the things that we need to have a better understanding of, to what degree are there folks who provide the specific services that we're seeking who are not bidding? And then in those cases, why are they not bidding? Is it something like they weren't aware, or is it something like the process of bidding for a public contract is just too much of a pain in the neck, and here are the problems.
Or the specifications are
The
written.
specifications are, and are any of those things within our reasonable control to adjust in order to expand our universe of potential bidders? The other, and that's, we need more information to make those determinations. But the other thing that point that was made by Councilmember Clark was that we are bound in substantial part on many contracts by the bidding restriction. We have to take the lowest responsible bidder. However, the caveat to that is that we can, in determining whether or not we can arrive at a contract with lowest responsible bidder number one, we can take into account whether they are making or are willing to make the good faith effort to achieve the targeted goals.
That's right.
So a bidder who is not willing to make that effort that in a way that satisfies the requirements that we're able to impose falls off the list, and then we go to lowest bidder number two. So that we can take into account. It's just we have to do it on a goal basis as opposed to a strict quota basis.
Very good, correct.
Two, real quick. I think my frustration is we're not measuring opportunity. We're only measuring those that got a check. As you said, you want people to have an opportunity, but we don't measure that. If 15 people bid, but the low bidder's a non-minority, then you get a 0 for that. So that's number one. Number two is I do own a small business. I do know what SIC codes are, and I would just caution everybody, SIC codes are so general. I know what my code is, and I would say if you take all the business in the United States that qualifies, and I have a very, very specialized business. I doubt if I could do 5% of what my code says I can. They're just very, very broad, given. Just because you're in the consulting business doesn't mean you can consult on coliseums or fairgrounds.
Right.
And the last comment, I mean, we built a new water plant here, and not a single contractor, I think from the state of North Carolina, bid, because to build a water plant is so specialized that I think the guy came from Ohio, somebody that built it. So, I mean, but that's what you got to be careful with SIC codes, and I'll just leave that. Y'all the experts, just my frustration with some of the data. Thank you, I'm done.
Okay.
I yield my time.
Councilmember Larson.
Yeah, one quick question. I mean, I think one of the things is accountability and recording data regarding minority participations. And my understanding is we all know that certain things have to be bid and we have to take the low bid and all that. I understand that. To our city manager, there is a threshold of what discretionary spending, and I think we're saying $20,000. That basically does not require bidding. What percentage of our operating budget would fall within that category? Do you have any idea how much money we're dealing with in there?
You have to bring this information back. This
Because obviously there's the issue. And I thought we began to address that question earlier with staff. Did we not?
Yes, we did, but because we don't have a system, a process system database in place to track people that bid, people that were notified, people who got a check, all of the boxes that they just said, we had no way of holding people in departments for the process accountable. We didn't know. We don't know.
They are reporting now? Something? Are they reporting
Well,
something?
we don't have the system.
We're gonna come with the system, the ask for the system, because again, even this is a process. They're telling us again, as you know, the recommendations. They're basically telling us that there's certain things we don't have in place that would help us to be able to determine.
To deal with that block of money that's being spent out of the city, correct?
And it's no secret that some of us, like me, have talked to the city manager and staff and members of this council, that we all know this is going on, and it's not just Winston, it's all over, it's Greensboro, it's everywhere. That if you're not managing the system of what the ordinances and things that you vote on to make better, not just for the citizens, but the people who contract, then that's our fault. But at the end of the day, this study will help us to be better. Councilmember Larson, that's how I look at it. It's going to help us to be better.
Quick observation, just something that I see sort of cutting across everybody's comments here is our inability to know who's available to do business in the city of Winston-Salem. We're no longer allowed to charge a privilege license, right? So people don't have to register with us. So if we want to go look at the overall universe of plumbers available for us to contract with, it's kind of, how do you go do that? They're not required to do that. I'm hoping when we get some representation down in Raleigh, that's something that we look at again, because not only is it a revenue source for us, but it's an ability for us to reach out to everybody who can do business in the city.
Any other comments? This is for information. This will be coming back. I hope staff has recorded all of the comments and questions that we need to do. I want to thank you, and I'm sure we're going to see each other some more. Thanks to Aisha and the MWBE department and the committee. Would you guys please stand, and I'm going to take a minute of privilege and tell us your name and what do you do, to be able to come to this committee, starting on this end right here.
I'm Lynn Metz, and I have my own business, and this process has certainly been a very eye-opening experience. We have a lot of work to do, for sure.
Drew Gerson, I'm an architect, work in commercial development, so all layers.
I'm Stephen Hemrick, I'm a construction attorney here in town, so kind of see a different perspective of things and that construction industry specific piece of working with the minority firms actually that try to do some of this work.
I'm Evan Witt with Gramercy Research in the county. I'm Kevin Byers. I work at Winston-Salem State. I'm the Assistant Dean for Budget Administration.
I'm David Dahl. I have a handful of businesses in town involved in the construction industry.
Thank y'all so much for your Thank you very much. Okay. Next item, please.
Item G4, information on the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee outreach efforts.
And this committee, Dan. Councilmember Bessie, can you give me like 5-10 minutes after 6? 5 minutes? Okay. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany White. I'm a project planner with Planning and Development Services. I'm also the staff coordinator for the Forsyth County Complete Count Committee. Here with me tonight is Paulette Everett. She's the regional program specialist from the U.S. Census Bureau for our region. And I'm here tonight to give you an update and an informational briefing about the Forsyth County Complete Count Committee and our efforts to date for the 2020 census. So, as you know, the 2020 decennial census is happening this spring. Some background about the Complete Count Committee. Initial planning for the Complete Count Committee happened in October 2018. We sent out appointment letters to community members inviting them to be part of the Complete Count Committee, and our first full meeting was held in April 2019. The appointees were divided into 6 subcommittees, and each subcommittee was tasked with working on the following questions. How does the census data impact their subcommittee constituents? What are the barriers to collecting that census data? What are some ways to remove or reduce those barriers that they identified? What resources they needed to implement that? And how did they implement preferred ways of reaching their constituents about the census? This is a very, very simplistic chart that I created just to kind of give you the world of what the census looks like locally. So the U.S. Census Bureau is obviously a very large organization, but here locally it's basically got 2 arms in regards to the decennial census. There's a local census office. It's down off North Point Avenue. It opened a few months ago. And basically they're tasked with the physical count. So they are recruiting census takers right now, and once the census actually starts, they'll be sending the enumerators out in the community to reach out to those people who do not self-respond. On the other side, we have the partnership specialists like Paulette here with me tonight, and she works directly with communities in her region to encourage outreach and information in the census, and she helps support complete count committees, of which ours is one. You can see the 6 subcommittees that we have locally under that heading: government, communications, business, education, nonprofit and area agencies, and hard to count populations. So subcommittees have been meeting independently since April 2019, and there have been an additional 4 full committee meetings with 2 more scheduled, and you can see the dates there, and I believe those have been added to your council update calendar as well. There's also been multiple statewide trainings about the census in order to involve complete count committees and community partners in unified messaging and outreach. Those are convened by the State Complete Count Commission and the NC Counts Coalition, which is a nonprofit whose purview is to bring the census information, especially to hard to count communities. This is the timeline of the census. We're about 8 weeks out. In middle of March, an invitation to respond to the census is going to hit mailboxes. It comes to the household, not to an individual. So part of our challenge in getting information about the census is to let people know not to throw away that thing that says resident or to the household of. That is the census. This is the first year the census will be held online. So there are some additional challenges there for people who may not have broadband or internet access, and I'll discuss that a little bit more. After that initial mailing, reminders go out through the end of March and beginning of April. By the end of April, a final reminder postcard will go out, and after that, the enumerators go out into our community. This is hard to read, and I apologize. This is a sample of what the census invitation will look like, and I'd like to call your attention to the box in the middle. This box in the middle is going to be very important to the households that receive it. It says respond by April 1st, and there will be a URL for them to reply online, along with a unique census ID. Now, when people answer the census, they will put in that ID code and it will identify their household. They can also use that ID number if they call in. If people don't have an ID number, they can still call in and Census Bureau workers will help them. So outreach and communications to date, our communication strategy locally relies heavily on existing Census Bureau material in order to save time and cost and promote a cohesive message. We also want to utilize existing communication channels for both our governments and our community partners. They have the built-in constituents. They have the newsletters and the emails and the mailing lists into which we can push this census data so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Each subcommittee can tailor their outreach message to their unique constituents as long as it complies with the overall census themes. So for our subcommittee that works with nonprofit agencies, they can tailor it to our senior communities. Our education can tailor it towards school children. And the subcommittees are encouraged to be creative and nimble with their outreach while also taking advantage of already planned events. So we've had several events already, both through the city and through our community partners, where census information has been distributed. This is just some of the many census materials that are out there. They're 18 different languages. They target every kind of population you can imagine, from school children to seniors to health community. Any subcommittee or subcategory that you want, there is something out there. And so I've encouraged all my subcommittee members, if there's something you need, let me know, and I guarantee I can find it. So some other outreach we've done, there's a local PSA. I know at least a couple members in the audience here and at the council table. We're part of that PSA. We're in the process of doing a second one with more community members. There's going to be some billboards throughout the community, both ones that we will purchase locally, and we've gotten some in-kind offers that I found out about just today, where some community organizations are going to allow us to share those billboards. There's going to be banners at fire stations, police stations, town halls, branch libraries, schools, all getting the message out. So as people go by, they're getting these messages from several different angles so they realize how important this is. We'll also have wraps on buses and city-county vehicles, and we're doing targeted outreach, as I mentioned, through our subcommittees and agency partners. This is just the general messaging as we roll through these next 4 months. This month we're talking about, the census is coming and what does it do and how does it benefit our community. Moving into February, we want to encourage them that it's safe and confidential. The Census Bureau is the only agency that is not allowed by law to share any of its information, and your information is confidential for 72 years. So nobody will know this information. They cannot tie it back to any individual, and in 72 years your great-grandchildren will be able to look you up on Ancestry, so it's a good thing. In March, once the census mailings go out, we want them to watch their mail, again, because this is coming to resident. The census is on its way, and how can I respond? Again, there are 3 ways. Over the internet, over the phone, and you can request a paper copy as well. The census is important for our community and it's confidential. And finally, in April, coming through the backside, a reminder that, have you filled it out yet? How can I respond? Remember, this is important. And also some additional messaging that the census takers will be in the community. Some other things we're working on, we are working with our local partners to create census response locations at our libraries, rec centers. We're using the mobile unit from the Piedmont Triad Regional Council. United Way also has a mobile unit, so some community partner agencies. There are also Goodwill and some of Senior Services, some other places where they have agreed to have computers available for people to come in and respond to the census. So it's a full community effort. Some subcommittee updates. I just have to say all of our subcommittees are really working hard and are doing such great work, and I definitely could not do this without them. Our government subcommittee is really leading the way at getting the banners at fire stations, substations, town halls, and all of our government vehicles. They are working with me and the nonprofit and hard to count subcommittees on getting those rec centers and branch libraries ready. And they're working with all Forsyth County cities, towns, villages to meet all of the needs of our county communities, not just here in Winston-Salem. Communications is setting up the ad buys and social media outreach and coordinating with other subcommittees for their communication needs. Education, they're having a Census Day event at area campuses. It's going to be the same day at the same time, so really showcasing how important it is for our campus communities. And there'll be banners at the K-12 schools as well as outreach through them. Our business community, we're doing presentations to area business groups, including the Venture Cafe and the Chamber. We're doing communications with large employers to include census information in its employee communications. Our nonprofit area agencies, they had a training event held on December 16th. It was basically a train the trainer, so that representatives from more than 60 nonprofits actually came to this to find out how they could integrate census communications into what they were already doing. There's going to be a follow-up event in February to see how that's going and to help support them as they move forward. And again, those partner sites for census response. And finally, our hard-to-count populations, they are going to have partner sites for census response. They are doing our targeted outreach to agencies with homeless and transient population, and they're really focusing on person-to-person communications from trusted partners, because it's been shown that especially in our hard-to-count populations, it's much less the overarching messaging and much more who they know and who's telling them how important this is to their community. So that is a very quick overview of what we're doing. I'm happy to take any questions.
There's a lot of information in a short period of time.
Yeah, there's so much more than that. I didn't want to overwhelm you.
Yeah. Councilman Beth.
General question, is there anything else you can use from us to be more effective?
I'll let you know.
And second, just take advantage of this education opportunity. Anybody watching, correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm leaving something important out, but getting a full count of the people in our community, make sure we get the funding for education, for transportation, for housing,
yeah.
And determines whether we get our full representation we're entitled to.
That's right.
In Congress and the state legislature.
That's right. As Paulette often says, it's all about money and power. So it's all about federal funding. And I put a sheet at your places. I couldn't put it in the presentation because the printing is so tiny and it wouldn't have shown up. But this is federal funding to the state of North Carolina as of fiscal year 2016. It's $23 billion with a B dollars, and it's broken up into 55 agencies. So you can see there, this isn't just for transportation funds. All of this is important. It's it's school hot lunches, it's kids' health care, it's everything. And yes, it does affect representation. North Carolina is set to pick up an additional congressional seat if we have a full and accurate count. The additional things that the census does, there's statistics and demographics that come out of the census that are used by pretty much every organization there is. Schools use it to consider where schools go, businesses use it to figure out where to place businesses. We in the planning department use it every single day. And then it also helps our area agencies, all those service providers, again, to our seniors, to our homeless populations. They apply for federal money through grants in order to serve those populations.
Councilmember Larson.
I'm excited to see this go online and have computer access. I'm concerned about, however, underserved populations and getting people that are not comfortable have access to libraries, other places to provide assistance in this matter.
That's right.
And particularly the availability of the paper form. Is that only going to be available at the census office or those forms?
You can request a form over the phone, and the final mailing that they send you will include a paper copy. So if you haven't responded up to that final mailing, when they contact you again, they'll send a paper version.
They'll automatically send you
That's
a paper
right.
form
If you haven't responded, that's right.
Everything triggers
the next thing, right.
I want to thank Tiffany and Paulette and everybody that's been working on this, and Zena. Zena is the chair of the government committee for the county and the city, so talking the whole county. So at our meetings are well attended. I'm on the committee, Lee, Kernersville, Walkertown, you name it, Louisville, the mayors, everybody, the managers, everybody's there. The one thing that we all have to understand again is Tiffany and them need all of us to constantly be talking about this census. This census this time has more ramifications than the last one. The last one, for whatever reasons, we were undercounted because of people not responding. That's how they track that. And we have got to do better this time. I've promised the state that we're going to do better this time because if you remember when 2009, Dan, Robert, they were like 23,000 in the city.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I keep up with that. Anyway, now we are up, we say we're over 245,000. We could be as high as 260, 270 if we just, because we're basing this still on the count that was undercounted. We could really be up there, and it's going to be so important. Our undercounted demographics were black children, black people, brown people, old people, and somebody else. It was something else. I forgot what it was.
Recent immigrants, people for whom English is not their first language.
So
there are a lot of categories.
We've got to make sure that we help everybody understand that data information is secure, but we need them to participate in order for us to get the dollars necessary for the infrastructure and the services that we provide our citizens across the county. Again, thank you. Looking forward to the updates as we move forward. Let's go count.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item G5, information regarding resident-driven neighborhood transformation modeling pilot project in the Dreamland Park neighborhood.
Yeah, Dar, his sister Richie, she plays too. And his brother Wayne. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here and to put a face behind the modeling outcome that we're going to provide for the Dreamland Estates and Skyland Village.
Chairwoman Adams, members of the committee. I'm Tasha Logan Ford, Assistant Manager here in Winston-Salem. This item was originally presented to Council Committee at the December 10th, 2019 meeting. There were several questions that were asked regarding this neighborhood modeling project that's in the East Ward. Dr. Graham is serving as the principal investigator with North Carolina A&T State University, who we are partnering with to do this project along with Habitat for Humanity. Several questions that you asked relative to the size of the project area have been included in your council packet. There were maps of the Dreamland area, which you specifically asked for the size of that neighborhood, the parcels, the total parcels that were in that neighborhood, also identifying the number of vacant lots that were in that neighborhood. So that information has been provided in the memo that's in the packet. Since the time that we initially presented this information to committee, we've also added an additional neighborhood. Councilman Recipient would also like for us to include the Skyline Village neighborhood as well. So you'll also see a map, which is attachment B that's in your packet, that also provides that same different demographic information for Skyline Village. There are also several questions that were asked by the committee around the project budget. $120,000 has been set aside as the project budget, with the East Ward neighborhood bond funds being the funding source. These funds would be used to pay for the research that's being done by A&T State University. Dr. Graham will go into a little bit more detail about the faculty members that are involved and also the graduate students that would be involved in this project. And it also includes a portion of those funds would go to Habitat for Humanity, $20,000 would go to them, and they would serve as the local contact with the university to help facilitate meetings in the community, help to facilitate some of the outreach that will need to take place in both of these communities as well. The project deliverables was also a question that was asked by the committee members. There were two examples that were provided in the packet. Dr. Graham will go over some visualizations as well. And for the deliverables, it would be a visual of these neighborhoods based on what the community members are communicating to the researchers that they would like to see, how they would like to see this community develop. thinking about economic factors, environmental factors, and also the social fabric of those communities. So at this time, I wanted to pause a moment and give Dr. Graham the majority of the time to be able to present this research project to you, how that project will work, and that way you all can also be able to ask questions to him directly as we move through this. So at this time, I would introduce Dr. Graham to the group.
All right, thank you so much. And so let's get started. So we want to take the time to introduce certain technologies in developing our neighborhoods and modeling that for our neighborhoods. And to do that, we want to use building information modeling technology and geospatial technology, which I'm sure most of you have heard and familiar with. And we just saw examples of the geospatial data that can be collected from the U.S. Census, and we'll use that data as well. We'll collaborate with the Department of Planning here at the city, as well as other officials within the city, and gathering that data, gathering the area for photography data as well, to help us give the base maps for the areas that we will be concentrating on. We'll then collect that data, the seed data is what we call it, so that we can start looking at how to approach transforming these particular neighborhoods. We would then visualize that data with immersive technology, all right? This will be easily accessible by all the residents, so that they can then, as they give us the data, we analyze it and redeploy it back out in a visual format, then the residents can then respond better. A 3D is a lot better than a 2D. It's hard to interpret from everybody, a 2D. 3D is a lot easier. And so we'll employ that, and we will work with, again, the planning department here in collecting a lot of the geospatial data to help us develop those approaches. We will then look at the environmental, the social, and the economic data, and then look at how we can put that data into this three-dimensional model. And we'll also use surveys and ground truthing to help gather that data. We will meet with the community residents. We will, on a weekly basis, or bi-weekly basis, or monthly basis, how we can structure that. Habitat and Humanity will be that component in the community so that we can then manage it through Habitat and reach out to the residents. This is my quick bio and what I can do in terms of managing the project as the lead for the project. I'm in the built environment, which handles construction management, geomatics, and environmental health and safety. You just talked about construction and all the issues with construction. We do a lot of that studies as well. I will be responsible for coordinating, talking with all the stakeholders, establishing the meetings, meeting with the city officials, the departments, and preparing the presentations and related documents, and submitting all the required documents. William Harrison is a landscape architect. He will be the one responsible for directing our students in and out of the studios, in on site, and taking the data, bringing the students out to the various community meetings, meeting with the residents, and developing the design scenarios through the design workshops. We'll gather that data, and our students, through their design studios, will start preparing the various approaches to the solutions for that community. And so what you get, not one master plan idea, you'll get multiple master plan ideas from students. And therefore, it gives a more robust conversation, and you get a lot more bang for your buck. So our students will meet with the residents, the city planners, business owners, and others. We have face-to-face meetings, we have online surveys, we have face-to-face surveys. We'll meet with the residents and other stakeholders. We'll collect the data, we'll discuss them, we'll address the solutions, we will submit recommendations, we will revise as needed, and we'll continue that process as we build this model. Here's an example of a project we've done in Burlington in 70 West. And it's Sedalia, which is a small town that we did a before and after streetscape imagine. So this is the process we want to use for visualization, deliverable example here. And we'll be able to actually go out to a YouTube environment And this is a 14-minute.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sedaya Downtown Streetscape.
But it will outline the entire process. So this is our master plan of the Sedaya area from before. We take you through the entire process until the after, right? And all of the narratives that go along with it. This is an outcome that we will produce for the city, for that community. And they'll be able to see this in real time as well. I'm gonna speed this up simply because of the sake of time. But you hear some befores, we talk about alternatives, we talk about different ways to address. Here's how we will start analyzing, in this particular case, the streetscapes. Here's how we will render out, based on the input from the residents, what their community could look like. We will do all the rendering, we'll do all the design efforts with our students and our faculty as well. This is an internet connection here, so.
Dr. Graham, I apologize for cutting you off, but we do have another committee meeting, so if you could kind of summarize.
Okay, so.
This is information, so I'm sure that the council member and others will be bringing you back, or staff will be presenting a recommendation or something to that effect.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We can get a copy of that, YouTube.
You have all of this in your packages as well, so you can review it. I can come back anytime you want me to.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. We grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Is there more? Were there more questions?
Any more questions from the committee? Councilwoman, you want to say anything?
The thing, I think I've said this when I introduced this, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the city to have partnerships with local resources and talent. I love the fact that the young people would be the ones coming up with an idea for what a neighborhood should be for their future, for their lives, and it looks into the future. It's not older people trying to decide what they would like. They're going to present it for older people to see how to appreciate it, and the fact that it's the latest technology, that to me is really wonderful, because it will be interactive, and I guess that's the part that we don't have time to see, but the neighbors would literally be able to do changes on the computer screens right there in real time. And so that's very, very wonderful, and I love it for these two neighborhoods, because these are neighborhoods that don't have a lot of internet connections and utilities. So this project has the ability to bring these neighborhoods into the 21st century using the technology that they need. And along with this, the visual of what these neighborhoods that have been long neglected and undeveloped would look like. There's lots of infill, and so this is a great technology. It's different than some of what we usually see, but it would be very engaging, and I know the residents will certainly appreciate that kind of attention that they will be given to create a vision for their communities.
Thank you. Again, this is information, so we'll be seeing more of it. I'm going to go ahead if there's nothing else, so we can dismiss and roll into Public Works.
And for staff that may need it, or committee members, will take up to a 5-minute comfort break, but in respect of everyone's time.
Thank you.